Hi, I'm Michelle Gullion, and I'm the Director of Collections and Research here at the National First Ladies Library. And today is Talk with the Curator. And we're going to look at Sarah Polk's mourning locket and her 42 years of mourning. So we're going to do a little bit of an overview of Sarah's life, and then we're going to look at some pieces that have to do specifically with Victorian mourning customs that were done back in the 19th century. Should be really neat. Sarah Childress Polk was born September 4th, 1803 in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Sarah was the oldest daughter of a wealthy plantation owner, Joel Childress. He believed in educating his daughters, which was unique for the time. And after schooling at their plantation, they were homeschooled. He sent Sarah and her sister to the Morovian Female Academy in Salem, Tennessee. The Morovians were a religious group that placed great emphasis on moral conduct. Sarah thrived on this solid foundation instilled in history, literature, religion, and etiquette and manners. These would serve her very well in her future career and in her political role. Sarah was extremely serious and religious, but she had a quick wit. She was the quintessential proper lady of the era, but with a strong interest in politics. She had dark features, and she had kind of an exotic look, and she loved clothing and dressed quite fashionably. Her dress and grooming were always careful and perfect, and she styled her hair just as carefully in long ringlets. It helped give a very good impression. Sarah married James Polk on New Year's Day in 1824, the same year that he began his service in the Tennessee legislature. She took an active role in his work and placed herself at his disposal. She accompanied him to Washington whenever possible and quickly endeared herself to the elite social circles. She assisted with writing his speeches, copied his correspondence, advised him, and watched over his health, which was always very precarious. She hated housework, so living in tiny quarters was perfectly fine with her. She was never regretful that she did not have children because it allowed her to travel with her husband and be free from the tedium of housework. Sarah was considered a devout Presbyterian, and she had extremely high moral principles. She never attended horse races or the theater. When she was in the White House, she banned dancing, card playing, and most hard liquor, although she did allow wine to be served at the White House. She loved to gather people by the piano, but only to sing hymns. Her style of managing and entertaining contrasted sharply with the Tyler administration before hers. Julia Tyler was known to enjoy a good party. Sarah's nickname became Sahara Sarah. She took no pleasure in the parties or elegant gatherings, yet maintained important social contacts with her skillful conversations, made widely popular and respected, especially with the male politicians. Sarah was known for her prudence. She had gaslight installed in the White House in 1846. She didn't spend all of the money allotted her for redecorating, which made her very popular with the Congress. The gaslight system failed the first night it was used, but she had placed candles there just in case. She brought in slaves to work at the White House, bringing her ability to live well under Polk's salary of $25,000. So, as you can see, she benefited greatly from slave labor. She approved of playing Hail to the Chief to announce the president's arrival, which was started by Julia Tyler, but Sarah instilled its playing routinely. President Polk's administration was about expansion, and her lavish dinners supported the war that was on Mexico, and where the talk was always about manifest destiny. Manifest destiny is an ideology that was brought about by the addition of Texas as a state after the war. It added the territory of California, New Mexico, and parts of Arizona. Sarah was a firm believer in manifest destiny. Manifest Destiny inspired a variety of measures designed to remove or destroy the Native American population. U.S. President James K. Polk is the leader most associated with Manifest Destiny. Manifest Destiny inflamed sectional tensions over slavery, which ultimately led to civil war. And this was because as we expanded, there was fights over expanding slavery into the West. In this painting that we're looking at by John Gast, it was painted in 1872, and it's entitled Manifest Destiny. And as you can see, the woman in the center is called Progress, this large kind of floating woman there. And on the top of her head is the star of the empire. The east is bringing the light, and the railways and the stagecoaches and the ships. And there's men farming here in the foreground. And then the stagecoaches are traveling to settle the West. And on the left-hand side, in the middle and background, you see the buffalo and the Native Americans retreating into the darkness and leaving the territory. Sarah did receive some criticism for her salon entertainment and lack of interest in speaking with wives of dignitaries, since she preferred to spend time talking with politics with the men. She was always careful to preface her opinions with "Mr. Polk said," or "Mr. Polk believes," to avoid criticism for speaking her views in public by using caution and self-control. She sought out Dolly Madison's advice on entertaining, but Dolly very wisely told her that it was up to her. It was her turn to be the First Lady of the White House. So instead, Sarah had Queen Dolly attend many events at the White House to much esteem. Bringing Mrs. Madison back to the White House turned out to be a very successful way to receive approval for her own hostess duties. In this picture, there are 3 women who served as First Ladies. James and Sarah Polk are in the center. Then right next to Polk is Dolly Madison. She's the second woman on the right-hand side, but her face is blurred. The first woman on the left-hand side, with her hair pulled back and her eyes are actually closed, that's Harriet Lane, and she was James Buchanan's niece and the official White House hostess during his administration. Most people that had the means to do so left the swampy area of Washington, D.C. for the summer because of disease and the high humidity. But James had so much to do that they did not leave, and he was often ill, as was Sarah, because Sarah was helping him. He never called his cabinet. It was Sarah who did the work with him. This work drained him so much that after 3 months after he retired from the presidency, he died after contracting cholera at his home in Polk Place. He died on June 15, 1849 in Nashville, and there was a city ordinance at the time because there was a cholera outbreak, and so victims of cholera had to be buried at the municipal cemetery on the edge of town. This dismayed Sarah very, very much. But by May of 1850, she was able to get him moved back to Polk Place and she'd also had time to create a lovely tomb built on the grounds. In this print that you see, you can see how much the Victorians loved the romance of the deathbed scene, where the dying, they romanticized this. This is where the dying made their last wishes known. The last words of the dying also carried a special significance for the Victorians. This wasn't a realistic depiction, but more of a theatrical one. In this print that you see, it's beautifully colored. It has a black border around it, as you did, it's showing deep mourning at the time. And it's also showing the drapery, so it's like this theater that opening it up for the drapery, and you can see the deathbed scene. Elizabeth Polk, James's mother, was alive at the time, so she gets the honor of being the weeping woman in the scene. This is also a very symbolic thing. She's not only weeping as his mother, but she's weeping for the country, for the loss of a great man. You'll see Sarah. Sarah's posed next to James, and she just looks beautiful, and I'm sure that secretly she was probably pretty happy that she didn't have to be buried in a hanky. Victorians were so very conscious of their place, not just on the world stage, but in society. So this was considered a proper way to die. After James's death, Sarah went into a very deep depression. She rarely left Polk Place except to attend church. She began to convert the home into a shrine for her husband. Her worried mother asked her to take over the care of an orphaned grandniece. Her name was Sarah Polk, and they called her Sally. Sally was only 3 when she was orphaned, and Sarah agreed to raise her, but then she quickly realized she needed help because she'd never raised children, and she hired a nurse for her care. This is a picture of Sarah with Sally many years later. Sally was the devoted companion to Sarah, and she lived with her all of Sarah's entire life. And she even, after she got married, she and her husband lived with Sarah as well as their children. Sarah lived for 42 years after Polk's death, always keen to keep his legacy. And after her death on August 14, 1891, she was buried next to James there at Polk Place. However, their tomb was moved to the Tennessee State Capitol grounds 2 years later in 1893, after the property was divided up and sold by the Polk heirs. As I said before, Sarah was devoted to the memory of James. She organized his papers, opened their Tennessee home to political guests eager to share his legacy, and turned their home into a museum, leaving his study untouched and in the exact same state as he had left it. Each day, she went to visit his tomb, and she never, ever stopped missing him. Perhaps, though, her best political ingenuity was during the Civil War, as she maneuvered preservation of her home as neutral territory between the Confederacy and the Union. It just became hallowed ground. As the Victorian custom for women, widows wore heavy black with no ornamentation for the first year, but the second year of mourning, they could wear jewelry and add color to their wardrobe. Sarah would follow this. She would wear black, though, for the rest of her life, but she did begin to include hints of color and jewelry. This brings us to our artifacts that we're going to share with you today. This is a note that Sarah wrote to an autograph seeker. She always signed her name Mrs. James K. Polk. She never signed it Sarah Polk ever again. This says, Mrs. James K. Polk. Enclosed after request of Frank Phillips, this autograph. Polk Place, Nashville, Tennessee, September 11th, 1858 or 50. We're not really sure. As you can see, this is very common of what you did in the Victorian era, of having mourning paper, and it had black lines that went all the way around it. Sometimes it was thicker. It depended on how deep you were in mourning. And so you can see that this isn't as deep as some of the mourning paper that I've seen along the edges. And then we come to the Polk Locket. This is very common. That was the type of mourning locket that you did. You put a picture of your beloved. This is a picture of James K. Polk that she cut out. It looks like it's from a print. And then on the back is enclosed, encapsulated, the mourning hair, a locket of his hair. This hair is actually wound around and encapsulated inside there, going around and around the encasement there. And then it's braided very finely at the ends. There was also, they would braid them, they would put different designs within the mourning hair. This is a very simple one. And what you're seeing here is this is our identification number that we keep it in inventory, and it tells us keep good care of where we find it. Oftentimes, what we do is when we put this on display, we put it on display like this, and then we've taken a picture really close and magnified it up and blow it up so that people can see what it looks like. But you're getting to see the real thing here through the camera. Thank you so much for joining us today with Talk for a Curator. Take care, be safe, and I'll see you next time.